any danger until they're completely formed.
We learned that last night at your house.
Your blank didn't change right away.
Not until you fell asleep.
What if I told you that one of the most terrifying science fiction films ever made, a masterpiece of paranoia that burrowed deep into the psyche of an entire generation and made them distrust their own neighbors, their friends, their lovers, was originally intended to have moments of comedy? And what if I told you that its bleak, iconic, soul-crushing ending, the very image that has come to define existential dread in cinema, was completely butchered and destroyed by the studio that produced it? That's right. The 1956 classic Invasion of the Body Snatchers wasn't just a movie, it was a battleground. It was a fierce, behind-the-scenes conflict between a daring director with a singular artistic vision and a terrified studio that feared its own audience, its own story, and its own time. In this video, we are counting down the 10 most incredible, most shocking secrets behind this legendary film. We'll explore the real-life nightmares, the happy accidents, and the corporate sabotage that culminated in the astonishing story of how the movie you know is not the movie that was actually made. Invasion of the Body Snatchers landed in American theaters in 1956, and it was more than just another creature feature in a decade already teeming with them. It was a cultural lightning rod. It was released into a world simmering with anxiety, the fear of atomic annihilation, the dread of a faceless, infiltrating enemy, and the crushing social pressure of suburban conformity. This was the era of the idyllic nuclear family, the manicured lawn, the friendly neighborhood barbecue, and this film took a sledgehammer to that facade. Directed by the lean, efficient master of tension, Don Siegel, and shot in stark, noir-inflected black and white, the film tells the story of Dr. Miles Bennell. He's a small-town doctor who uncovers an insidious, silent alien conspiracy to replace every human being with an identical, emotionless duplicate grown from a giant, pulsating seed pod. The paranoia was tangible, the suspense suffocating. Do you remember the first time you saw it? That creeping, sinking feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong in the town of Santa Mira? Share that indelible memory in the comments below. But the real story, the one that unfolded when the camera stopped rolling, is arguably even more compelling. Our countdown of the secrets that forged this masterpiece begins now. Number 10. The invasion began on a magazine stand. Long before it became a benchmark for cinematic horror, The Body Snatchers was born in the glossy mainstream pages of a quintessential American magazine. Back in 1954, Collier's magazine was a staple in middle-class homes, known for its fiction, journalism, and wholesome illustrations. It was here that author Jack Finney's story was published as a 3-part serial. Imagine the anticipation of the 1950s reader waiting a week for the next installment of this terrifying tale to arrive in the mail. This built-in suspense immediately captivated veteran producer Walter Wanger. Wanger was a respected, independent-minded figure in Hollywood, known for taking risks. He was so utterly convinced of the story's cinematic potential that he famously began negotiating for the film rights before he had even read the second part of the serial. He didn't need to know how it ended. He instinctively understood that Finney had tapped into a primal, universal fear, the fear of losing your identity, of seeing the world you know replaced by a cold, soulless imitation. That fear was cinematic gold. Number 9. The intense battle for the perfect title. A film's title is its marquee promise, its first contract with the audience. And the promise of this film was almost something very different. Jack Finney's novel was simply The Body Snatchers. It's direct, pulpy, and creepy. However, the producers were extremely wary of audience confusion with a well-regarded 1945 Val Lewton horror film called The Body Snatcher. So, the hunt began. The studio brainstormed titles like They Come from Another World, Better Off Dead, and World in Danger, all perfectly generic B-movie titles that could have been slapped on dozens of other films. The film's star, Kevin McCarthy, made a far more elegant and poetic suggestion, Sleep No More, a chillingly beautiful reference to how the victims were replaced in their slumber. But perhaps it was too subtle for the era's marketing. The studio ultimately settled on the bombastic, sensational, and frankly perfect title, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It was a title that screamed from the movie poster, a title that promised spectacle, scale, and a threat that was not just personal, but global. Number 8. The future master of violence was a dialogue coach. The history of cinema is filled with fascinating before-they-were-famous stories, but this one is truly special. The next time you watch the film, pay very close attention to the man who makes a brief, almost blink-and-you'll-miss-it appearance as Charlie.
Who is it?
It's a gas man. Morning, Doc.
The town's gas meter reader. That unassuming man is none other than Sam Peckinpah, the future trailblazing, hell-raising director of ultra-violent revisionist masterpieces like The Wild Bunch and Straw Dogs. Imagine the contrast. The man who would later become famous for his slow-motion ballets of bloodshed was, in 1956, working on set as a quiet dialogue coach, helping the actors refine their line deliveries. Years later, as his own legend grew, Peckinpah would controversially claim he performed major rewrites on the script, a claim that was fiercely denied by the credited writer Daniel Manwaring and others on set, who said his contributions were minimal. But the fact remains, one of the most controversial and influential directors of the 20th century got his Hollywood start in the quiet, terrified, and soon-to-be soulless town of Santa Mira. Number 7. The actor's real-life Plaster nightmare. One of the film's most skin-crawling, unforgettable scenes is the discovery of the half-formed, bubbling replicas of the main characters emerging from the giant alien pods. This terrifying effect was achieved through a grueling, intensely physical process. The lead actors had to be completely encased in hot, heavy plaster to create full-body molds. They were laid out on slanted boards, unable to move, breathing only through straws as the material hardened around them like a sarcophagus. You can imagine the heat that it generated as it cured, the smell of the plaster, the profound sense of helplessness. For actress Carolyn Jones, who suffered from severe claustrophobia, the experience was a living nightmare. This process wasn't just uncomfortable, it was thematically resonant. The actors were physically trapped and immobilized, a chilling parallel to how their characters would be metaphysically trapped and replaced by the pods. To make matters worse, Dana Winter recalled the technicians playing a cruel prank. As she lay entombed, they tapped on the outside and said, "Dana, listen, we won't be long, we're just going out for lunch." It was a real-life horror story in service of a cinematic one. Number 6. The Freeway scene that nearly killed its star. The film's climactic sequence, featuring Dr. Bennell running frantically onto a busy highway, is an iconic cinematic moment of pure, undiluted desperation. But its filming pushed the boundaries of safety. Actor Kevin McCarthy was at the absolute limit of his physical and mental endurance. The aggressive production schedule required him to run and run and run for days on end. He was suffering from debilitating muscle cramps, the infamous Charlie horses, and was profoundly sleep-deprived. Director Don Siegel, a man known for his no-nonsense pursuit of realism, was genuinely terrified for his star's life. He feared that McCarthy's exhaustion would cause his timing to falter by a split second, sending him stumbling under the wheels of the very real cars and trucks. The scene was shot on a little-used bridge at the crack of dawn, but the danger was palpable. The raw, wide-eyed panic you see in Miles Bennell's face wasn't just acting. It was the authentic fear of a man pushed to his absolute breaking point, performing a dangerous stunt in a state of sheer exhaustion. Number 5. The film that permanently altered our language. Great art doesn't just reflect culture, it creates it. Few films have done this as profoundly as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which permanently injected the term pod people into the global lexicon. Today, we use that phrase to describe individuals who seem to have lost their spark, their passion, their very soul. It's a cultural shorthand for the soulless conformist, the emotionally vacant boss, the unthinking member of a political mob. The term became so potent because it gave a name to a subtle creeping horror we all recognize. The feeling that someone we once knew is gone, replaced by a hollow shell that's just going through the motions. It's a psychological diagnosis born from a science fiction movie. A testament to how deeply the film's central concept resonated with our own fears about identity and conformity. Number 4. The director's method to the madness prank. Don Siegel was a master of suspense, and that mastery extended beyond the camera. He understood that to direct a film about paranoia, it helped to cultivate an atmosphere of genuine unease. During the production, he decided to bring the film's terror into the real life of his leading lady, Dana Winter. He took one of the life-sized, deeply unsettling pod props and left it on her doorstep one night. Winter claims she nearly broke her neck tripping over it when she left her house the next morning. Siegel, a natural showman, loved to embellish the tale, often claiming he broke into her house and hid the pod under her bed, causing her to become hysterical. Whichever version is true, the intent was clear. This wasn't just a simple joke. It was a form of method directing. It was a calculated act to keep his actors off balance, to blur the line between the fiction they were creating and the reality they were living, ensuring that the fear they portrayed on screen was immediate, authentic, and deeply felt. Number 3. An accidental and perfect political masterpiece. From the moment it was released, this film has been endlessly dissected as a powerful political allegory. But its genius lies in its ambiguity. For decades, many interpreted it as a potent metaphor for the Cold War and the Red Scare, a warning against a faceless, infiltrating communist ideology that erases the individual in favor of the collective, the dreaded hive mind. The pod people in this reading are communists. But just as many, and perhaps more, saw the exact opposite, a brilliant and subversive critique of McCarthyism. In this reading, the pod people are not the invaders, but the society itself, a culture that demands mindless conformity, that punishes dissent, and that hunts down and eliminates anyone who dares to be different. The true horror isn't the aliens, it's the unthinking, finger-pointing mob. The filmmakers themselves were divided, with the cast and crew offering different interpretations. This ambiguity is the film's secret weapon. It's a perfect mirror, reflecting back the deepest political and social anxieties of whoever dares to look into it. And now we've arrived at the heart of the matter, the one secret that rewrites the film's legacy. Because the most shocking truth about Invasion of the Body Snatchers is that Don Siegel's chilling, uncompromising work of art was hijacked, censored, and mutilated by a studio that got cold feet. The Golden Flicker Moment. Number 2. The studio gutted the humor and annihilated the ending. Don Siegel was a smart filmmaker. He knew that unrelenting tension can numb an audience. His original cut contained numerous scenes with a lighter, more human touch of humor. His logic was brilliant. He wanted the characters to initially react to the idea of pod people with disbelief and even sarcastic jokes, as any real person would. This realism would make their eventual horrifying acceptance of the truth all the more impactful. But when the studio executives saw the cut, they panicked. In Siegel's own scathing words, they believed horror films are horror films and there's no room for humor. He said their decision proved they had pod brains themselves. They ordered every trace of wit and nuance cut from the film. But that was nothing compared to the final betrayal, the annihilation of the ending. Siegel's original ending is one of the most daring, bleak, and nihilistic conclusions in the history of American cinema. It ended on that highway. Dr. Bennell, alone, broken and defeated, screams his warning to an indifferent universe as trucks filled with pods drive off to conquer the planet. The end. No hope. No escape. The universe does not care. Humanity was lost. The studio Allied artists was absolutely horrified. They deemed it far too grim, too nihilistic for a mainstream audience. They demanded a more hopeful, reassuring conclusion. Against Siegel's furious objections, they forced him to shoot a new prologue and epilogue, which framed the entire film as a flashback. In this new studio-mandated ending, the authorities finally believe him. The FBI is called. The fight can be won. A profound statement of existential dread was transformed into a safe, conventional thriller. This complete violation of the film's artistic and philosophical core is a true cinematic turning point. Do you agree that this is the golden flicker moment? And all this brings us to number 1, the voice of God that almost was. Even with the studio's meddling, producer Walter Wanger had one last brilliant ace up his sleeve, an idea that would have lent the film an incredible sense of prestige. Orson Welles. Wanger was desperate to have the iconic booming voice of the Citizen Kane director, a voice already associated with a terrifyingly real alien invasion thanks to his War of the Worlds radio broadcast, bookend his movie. The plan was for Welles to deliver an unsettling soliloquy at the beginning and then return at the very end with this chilling warning. In this day and age, anything can happen. And if you're asleep when it does, you're next. It would have been magnificent. Welles's involvement would have elevated the film from B-movie to art house event. Unfortunately, scheduling conflicts, or perhaps Welles's notorious reputation in Hollywood by that point, prevented it from happening. Wanger then considered legendary sci-fi author Ray Bradbury, but that idea was also eventually abandoned. It remains one of the great what-ifs in science fiction history. From a magazine serial to a battleground of creative vision, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is more than just a movie. It is an artifact of artistic conflict. Its survival as a masterpiece is a testament to the raw power of its central idea. It's a classic that thrives not because of the studio's decisions, but in spite of them, retaining its terrifying power to make us look at the world around us and wonder, are you really you? The scars from its creation don't weaken the film. They make its story, both on-screen and off, that much more compelling. If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribe to Golden Flicker so you don't miss any behind-the-scenes stories from Hollywood. What movie or actor do you want to see here in the next video? Let us know in the comments.